Some big promises for those running a new bagel shop coming to Marshall Street, how they plan to bring New York-style bagels to the Hill.
And big-name companies keep laying off their staff, what that means for the U.S. economy.
And the market's rallying today after earnings from big tech and some other companies. We'll break it all down with our market movers and market update. Hold on to your wallets because Market Shares starts right now. Good afternoon and welcome into our first Market Shares episode of the semester. Good to be back. Good to have you back. I'm Bradley Hoppenstein.
And I'm Benjamin Schiller. A new job report for the U.S. Let's take a look at this. We're just getting these reports into our newsroom right now, and there was a large increase in GDP for this upcoming year.
Yeah,
this past year, I should say.
Yeah, 353,000 jobs added. But the other thing, the unemployment rate staying steady at 3.7%. But if you take a look at your screen right now, wages are actually slowly starting to outpace prices. Wages are up about 4.5% from this time a year ago. And the Fed also looking like they're not going to raise rates again. They held steady this week. And that next decrease in rates is expected to be sometime this summer, Ben.
And what's kind of interesting here is that this has to coincide with the job openings. There's a lot of job openings on the market, and the job report shows that the economy here in the U.S. is simply booming. Notable growth in food services, healthcare, and various good categories. There was just millions of job openings in 2023. We'll dive into that later in the show, but Bradley, this is really good for the U.S. right now.
Yeah, and one other note, the Fed actually went in and revised the November and December numbers, and they're actually adding 126,000 more jobs to those numbers. So things are looking good on the job front, and things are looking good on the wage front, Ben.
Yeah, it definitely is, and this is a good thing to see, and we'll talk about this throughout the show today.
All right, well, speaking of the Fed, we have an update from that Fed meeting on Wednesday. The Federal Reserve held interest rates steady, like we mentioned, but they're opening the door to cutting those rates. The Fed signaling that a March move is probably a long shot with rapidly slowing inflation.
And in a news conference this week, Fed Chair Jerome Powell said, quote, "The timing of the first rate decrease is linked to our gaining confidence that inflation is on a sustainable path down to 2%. Continuing, I don't think it is likely Fed officials will reach that level of confidence by the time of the March meeting. It's probably not the most likely case," end quote.
Yeah, so March not looking good, but a lot of economists think that rate cut could come sometimes this summer, a few more cycles, if you will. The other big story we're following this week, the CEOs of Meta, TikTok, Snapchat, Discord, and X testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee on Wednesday to confront the harms their platforms have caused in younger Americans. The CEOs also agreeing to more checks on their power. They face the families of children who died following cyberbullying, sexual exploitation, and other harmful events on their platforms.
And despite numerous bills and hearings, Congress has only passed one kid safety law in the last decade, a narrow measure dealing with online child sex trafficking. The CEOs expressed condolences for the families hurt on their platforms, but reiterated the work they've already made to keep users safe. Let's actually take a listen to what Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg had to say in Washington this week.
Mental health is a complex issue, and the existing body of scientific work has not shown a causal link between using social media and young people having worse mental health outcomes. A recent National Academies of Science report evaluated over 300 studies and found that research, quote, did not support the conclusion that social media causes changes in adolescent mental health at the population level, end quote.
And Amazon reported fourth quarter results that sailed past analyst estimates and gave strong guidance for this quarter. Net income surged to $10.6 billion or a dollar share compared to 3 cents a year earlier. The company laid off almost 30,000 employees last year and is still looking for ways to trim expenses in other areas, such as its fulfillment businesses. In January, it announced cuts in Prime Video, MGM Studios, and Twitch. Last month, the company also began to show ads on Prime Video, a move that's expected to generate some new and substantial revenue for the company. And we talked about them last week, but Pfizer actually beating earnings this week. Revenue has been on a downward trend since we started coming out of the pandemic, and it's been a rocky year for the company as demand just continues to plummet. But its adjusted Q4 profit is closer to Wall Street's expectations. The biggest price here is the U.S. government is actually returning 6.5 million doses of Pfizer's COVID drug, Paxlovid. That return was initially valued at $4.2 billion. Now Pfizer says it's only expecting about $3.5 billion in returns. The company says fewer than expected returns is a good sign because it means the use of drug increases in the fourth quarter. Pfizer stock actually sits around $27 a share right now. That's a 52-week high, though, nearly $45 a share just 52 weeks ago.
All right, Ben, Starbucks, one of a few companies this week, like Pfizer, with disappointing earnings. The coffee giant missed Wall Street's expectations as both domestic and international sales fell short of estimates. The company posting $9.4 billion in revenue compared to about $9.6 billion expected. Starbucks stock, though, pretty much unfazed by the news, even as its CEO warns things could get worse as they face challenges like boycotts in the U.S. and cheaper coffee rivals in China. Starbucks is now lowering its full-year revenue outlook to reflect all this, and it's now forecasting revenue growth in the range of 7 to 10%, down from the range of 10 to 12% yearly growth expected before this latest earnings report.
And now to the tech front, Microsoft is off to a great start of the year. The tech giant beat on its top and bottom lines in its earnings report on Tuesday. You would think most of it is related to AI, but it's actually from growth in its cloud services. Oh, and listen to this. Microsoft's largest deal ever with its acquisition of Activision Blizzard is going through this quarter. Revenue was about $8 billion, more up than the $62 billion in the fiscal Q2 report. That's an increase of nearly 18% from a year ago, but Microsoft's cloud segment single-handedly brought in $26 billion in income. Microsoft says a third of its Azure AI customers are new in the past year and expects that number to continue to grow.
All right, let's talk Elon Musk. Some bad news for the Tesla founder and CEO. A Delaware judge is ruling the Tesla CEO cannot keep a Tesla pay package worth more than $55 billion. Now, this ruling comes after a stakeholder filed the lawsuit 5 years ago, but Musk is being accused of breaching his duties and wasting corporate assets to enrich himself. The judge says Musk failed to prove why the payday was fair. Tesla stock falling 4% in after-hours trading, but for Musk, this ruling could hurt some of his quest to become the richest person in the world.
And now to the baseball field. The Baltimore Orioles were sold for a deal worth more than $1.7 billion. The Angelos family sold the team to a group involving billionaire David Rubenstein. Rubenstein, who is a Baltimore native, will be the control person for the organization when Major League Baseball approves the deal in coming weeks. The Orioles recently signed an extension to remain at Camden Yards in the city's downtown area. Peter Angelos bought the historic franchise in 1993 for $173 million. Wow. And if you walked by the corner of Marshall Street and University Avenue, where the Starbucks used to be, you've seen a lot of activity through the past few months. Many people have been asking, when is that bagel shop actually going to open?
Yeah, Ben, that Starbucks has been gone way too long, but a new solution because there aren't many places to get a bagel near campus. But our Chillicothe Adele shows us a group is trying to change that.
The Syracuse campus, a bazaar of all different sorts of food. There's big chains, local guys, and even places we've lost. Rip Jimmy John's. But if you're looking for a bagel,
you know, I have to drive, I have to take my car to the lot.
Well, I usually DoorDash it to my dorm.
It usually isn't coming from here. Water Street is about a 7-minute drive, and DeWitt Bagel Company isn't right around the block either.
Order it up. Do it now.
But a new shop aims to change that. Schoolyard Bagels is opening up at the corner of Marshall and University Ave, and its owners believe there's a need.
With such a big downstate presence that's going to school here between Long Island, the 5 boroughs, Jersey, Westchester, what have you, that how can I have a bagel store up here?
Listen, lots of people from downstate will have big expectations, right? Well, the people here at Schoolyard think their bagel making process will give them a little taste of home.
At the end of the day, it's about, one, the recipe, but more importantly, the proofing process.
Yep, the bagels are proofed on racks like these after being shaped. They're boiled and then baked. Plain, everything, you name it.
That's a big bite. I'll give it an 8-1.
Rated like a 9.1.
Members of the SU football team had some high praise for the bagels. There's also a lot of sandwiches too, like the vodka parm. Carmine Cura is the main chef and co-owner here. He hails from Queens and is now taking his cooking skills to the mainstream.
Anybody who's been in the kitchen enjoys cooking. You know, you get creative with stuff. And that's what I like to do. Listen, as long as they tell me, Carmine, keep cooking it, keep making it, that's a good sign.
Now, he and co-owner Nick Castronovo, who actually met working as stock traders in North Jersey, will welcome those waiting and ready.
I'm excited. I love bagels. I hope it works out very well, and I'm excited to try it.
Even until 3 in the morning some days, hoping to make the trip for a fresh bagel a little bit shorter. On Marshall Street, I'm Chile Casiadele, Citrus TV News.
Oh, Chile, I can't wait. All right, we're about 11 minutes past the hour here, but a big week for the markets on that jobs report and tech earnings. Your market update and market movers when we come back.
Life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome. Prediabetes does. 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, but with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. And you can change the outcome. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test today. Go to doihaveprediabetes.org.
Women are bad with money.
It's what the world's been saying for centuries. But now,
we've got something to say.
Save it. Save the old-fashioned advice, the empty excuses. It's all worthless, unlike us.
To our fellow females, it is time to save ourselves by saving our money.
Contributing to our futures, investing in our independence.
Until we're no longer
80% more likely than men to live in poverty in retirement.
So again, we say to that, save it.
The falsehoods, the feelings of fault, then the funds.
Learn how to save for your retirement at wesaysaveit.org.
All right, welcome back to Market Shares. Big week for the major 3 indexes in the U.S. Let's take a look at how they ended the week. We're going to start things off with the Dow, per usual, and then we'll get into the S&P and NASDAQ as well. All right, there we go. So we're actually going to start with the S&P here. It was up about 70 points on the week, sitting just under 5,000 points on the stock exchange, and then the Dow up about 575 this week, 38,000, and the NASDAQ sitting at around 16,000, up 160 points this week. But the biggest thing, Ben, a lot of green on your screen right now.
Yeah, it was a great week for the U.S. economy, especially with the job reports and everything going on with the economy. I think the biggest note right now is that the Dow ends Friday up 1.5%. I mean, if you look through the week, it's been going up since Monday. Now we're on Friday, and it's an exponential climb. But the NASDAQ looked like on Wednesday took that big hit.
Yeah, when you look at the NASDAQ and the S&P, a lot of tech earnings this week that are playing into those, even as some of those tech companies do continue to go through layoffs. But the bigger thing here, all 3 indexes are in the green because of that jobs report. The jobs market is strong and the economy is holding steady. And of course, the Fed staying steady on interest rates. That's also a good sign for the markets, obviously. And they reflect that.
They definitely do. And
let's get to our movers here. We're going to start things off with Qualcomm. So Qualcomm, you know, they're known for their chips. They make the chips and processors in pretty much every smartphone out there. Qualcomm actually down today, but they beat earnings earlier this week, and things were looking better. The reason they're down, though, is demand is still unstable in the tech and smartphone sector. But their revenue was up 16% year over year after 2 years of decline. So a lot of analysts, a lot of economists think Qualcomm will be a good buy in the long run, but the demand in the smartphone sector is just not quite there yet. Qualcomm is looking at this year as kind of a recovery year. They're calling it a year of correction, but things are slowly moving in their favor.
Yeah, and if you look on this past week, especially on Thursday, it took that major dip down. And it took that dive because the company announced it was lowering its guidance for the year. But, many are shocked because Qualcomm for the last 2 years has had major increases in sales and net income. And especially, it's been a good year for smart chips, too.
Yeah. All right, let's take a look at NYCB here, Ben.
That's the New York Community Bank Corp. And that regional bank announced a net loss of $252 million this past year, striking fears for regional banks in the U.S. It took a major drop after stress in commercial real estate portfolio reports. And also, the banking index, because of this drop, took a major hit for the first time since last spring when Signature Bank collapsed. And this stock, especially the NYCB stock, took that dip down to 40% just this week alone.
Yeah, that's not just a dip, Ben. I mean, that's a complete nosedive right there. And they're stoking some broader fears around the banking sector, like you mentioned with Signature Bank about a year ago, Silicon Valley Bank, the infamous story of that downfall. But the regional bank, NYCB, they reported a net loss of $252 million.
Yeah.
Compared to a net income a year ago of $17 million.
It's definitely striking fears, especially with some collapse, especially in the real estate market in the past year. So it's definitely a big deal. And moving on to Meta, our final market mover of the week. And it ends on a high note. Meta is up nearly 22%. Profits are up, and revenue definitely took a dive as well.
Yeah, Meta, it's a really interesting story. Even with all the scrutiny they face, their stock is just resilient. Their share is surging 20% just this morning on their big profits and beating expectations, and they actually upped their forecast on the year. Ben, their profit tripled in the fourth quarter last year, and their revenue up 25% year over year to $40 billion. A year ago, that number was just $32 billion.
And that revenue is increasing mainly because of online ad spend. That is going up. Online ad revenue is through the roof. It's been going up for the last 2.5 years since the height of the COVID pandemic. We should also note the first ever dividend for Meta, 50-cent per share payout. That is scheduled for March 26th, so just about a month and a half from now. Meta could possibly go up more on the stocks.
Yeah, and another thing with Meta is they actually gained $200 billion in market cap just this morning or this week alone, and it's a combination of all the things we just talked about. They're running a stock buyback, they're starting to pay the dividend, obviously profits are up too, but $200 billion, they're buying back $50 billion in shares, so that's just adding to their value as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a good time to be a Meta stock investor. Anyway, hundreds of companies have been going through mass layoffs, and we'll dive deeper into that after the break. Many are wondering why. Stay tuned.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back.
Dad!
You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Welcome back. Citigroup, Google, and PayPal are just a few of the big name companies laying off employees across the U.S. With more on what these job cuts mean for the economy, though, is our analyst Peter Barry. Hey, Peter.
Bradley, Ben, it's great to be on this afternoon. So the opening month of 2024 has officially come to an end, but that has unfortunately also led to the ends of people's jobs. Companies left and right have been laying off employees. Over 80,000 workers have been laid off by over 100 companies. Some of these big company names include, but are not limited to, Citigroup, Google, PayPal, UPS, Microsoft, and Sports Illustrated. It marked the second highest level of job cuts in the month of January since January of 2009. Citigroup cited that they had their worst quarter in 15 years with nearly a $2 billion loss. Google laid off about 1,000 employees to reduce its overall expenses. According to the New York Times, Google has more than 180,000 employees, so the layoffs impacted less than 1% of their workforce here. And PayPal is reducing its workforce by 9%. According to its CEO, the move is being made to right-size the company and include the elimination of current jobs as well as vacant position. UPS just announced the other day 12,000 layoffs as part of its plan to reduce expenses, cutting it down nearly $1 billion. And Microsoft is reducing its workforce by 2,000 jobs, a number equal to about 8% of its gaming division. The move comes after Microsoft's purchase of Activision. Sports Illustrated let go nearly all of their employees as the online publication struggled to compete in the digital era. That's nearly 100 journalists. The silver lining for the newly unemployed, the U.S. economy had 9 million open jobs as of year-end 2023, according to the federal government. The issue is whether these people are qualified for the positions which other employers are looking to fill.
Hey Peter, what industries are hiring and which markets are actually losing jobs? We know in the past month there's been 9 million jobs on the market. So which of the industries are actually hiring and which are losing jobs these days?
So January 2024 was the second lowest hiring month in 15 years. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the departments that are hiring are more government workers, construction workers, or healthcare workers. And the places that are losing the jobs are mainly transportation and big tech and big media businesses, because now they're turning to more automation, AI to do those jobs. But small businesses are really leading the force here. They're hiring a lot of people, nearly 57% of the workforce, and making up 46% of private sector workers.
Peter, with the economy doing well and layoffs still very prevalent or increasing, what can we see for the unemployment rate for the foreseeable future? What do you think?
So right now, the unemployment rate stays at around 3.7%. But compare that to pandemic numbers. Pandemic numbers was around 15%. So it's relatively low this time of year. On the worst month, January of 2009, unemployment rate was around 7.6%. But we got to take into account that was a recession year. So for the foreseeable future, the unemployment rate could possibly stay really steady here, and as jobs fluctuate for people.
Let's compare 2023 to 2022. How did this past year compare to 2022 in terms of the number of layoffs?
So layoffs in 2024 surged 130% compared to last year. However, jobs increased over 350,000 in 2024. Although there were a lot of layoffs, there's still a growing economy out there, and we could see it for 2024 and beyond here.
All right, Peter, thank you so much. Half of renters in the U.S. have found themselves paying more than they can afford following years of surging rent prices. But an increase in apartment complexes has helped rein in runaway rents. Here with more is analyst Jacob Goldberg. Hey, Jacob.
Thanks, guys. If you're feeling the pressures of mounting rent payments, you are not alone. A study published this week from Harvard University found that half of renters in the United States pay more than they can afford on rent. Harvard defines spending too much as 30% of your overall salary, but 12 million people nationwide are classified as severely cost-burdened. This means they're spending more than half of their overall income on housing. This past month, the Biden administration passed the Renters' Bill of Rights, looking to aid the millions of Americans struggling to make ends meet. The document says that with rents rising nearly 26% nationally during the pandemic, this forced many Americans to make difficult trade-offs in their household budgets between food, healthcare, and education because, quote, the rent eats first. That rent eats first part is really important. According to the same report, higher out-of-pocket rent costs result in increased likelihood of negative health outcomes. And limited housing supply has created competition between renters. This gives the landlords the leverage who decide to raise the rates of housing and extend lease terms. This is yet another point the Biden administration hammered in their report. They say that the lease terms should be written in simple and clear language accessible to the renter, and that the leasing process should ensure tenants understand the terms of the lease through a plain language briefing. So the question remains, with many Americans stuck in the housing that they can't afford, is there any good news I could provide on the future of this crisis? Actually, there is some. Nationally, rents have declined from their post-pandemic highs, but still average out to $1,700 a month. In cities like the Big Apple, that number is a hair over $4,000. And across the country, multifamily apartment homes are being built at record rates. In the third quarter of last year, 2023, 436,000 of these units were completed, which was the highest number since 1988. The number of multifamily units under construction last year peaked at 1 million last summer. And while the number is currently in decline, it has stayed at a historically high level. So while families might not see some immediate relief from the high cost of housing, many may be struggling less in the future. Guys, back to you.
All right, Jacob, thank you so much. After the break, we'll look at a disagreement between Universal Music Group and TikTok. Stay tuned.
They'll test you. Try to break your will. But however loud the loudness gets, however many cheese puffs may fly, you're the driver, the one in control. Stand firm. Just wait. And move only when you hear the click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
Dad?
Just 1 minute, okay?
Hey, Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Can birds draw pictures?
I don't have an answer for that.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Hey, welcome back into Market Shares. Bradley, listen to this. TikTok users woke up Thursday to see that videos with songs by stars including Taylor Swift, Lana Del Rey, and Drake had gone silent. TikTok says it has removed all music by artists licensed to Universal Music Group after a public brawl between the companies.
In an open letter, UMG argued that TikTok was not compensating its artists fairly and allowed the platform to be, quote, flooded with AI-generated recordings as well as developing tools to enable, promote, and encourage AI music creation on the platform itself, end quote.
As UMG points out, TikTok's colossal success has been built upon music by artists, and in turn, emerging artists have used the platform to launch their own careers. So Bradley, I think the key note in all of this is that TikTok has gone silent about this. This is Friday. We've not heard it from TikTok in the last 48 hours about this dispute.
Yeah, so Universal basically put out a statement saying they don't pay the artists enough, they don't have enough royalties, all that kind of stuff. Of course, it comes down to money. But then TikTok actually fired back with a statement and basically said something to the effect of, we don't care, like we don't need you. The truth, Ben, I think this is a double-edged sword. I think they need each other because TikTok is great for music promotion, and obviously UMG has a long list of artists in their catalog. TikTok wants them because music's a very important part of the platform.
I mean, you and I both know TikTok as a music-first platform. Whenever you go on TikTok, it's people with music in the background. This mainly impacts creators on the app. I mean, ByteDance, who is the investor and the owner of TikTok, it's going to bite them. They're not on the market yet. They're not an IPO, but it's going to hurt their value, in my opinion.
The other thing, I don't know if it's just a placebo, but when I've gone on TikTok the past like 2 or 3 days, I feel like I'm seeing less and less videos with music. I don't know if it's like placebo, if I'm just looking for it, but I feel like if TikTok permanently loses UMG, they could just turn into some version of Vine.
Well, I'm not really a TikTok guy. I'm more of a YouTube Shorts guy.
You're more of an Instagram Reels guy.
Yeah, this does not affect me at all, TikTok, right now.
I think we're out of time. I think that's all we got for you on this first episode of the semester on market shares. Be sure to follow us on social media. I'm Bradley Hoppenstein.
And I'm Benjamin Schiller. Have a great night, Syracuse, and hopefully TikTok figures it out.